Imagine you're driving down a really busy highway, and suddenly, like out of nowhere, a stray dog darts out into your lane.
Oh, terrifying.
Right. But before you even consciously realize what's happening, your hands have already yanked the steering wheel. You throw your car toward the shoulder to avoid a collision.
You're acting on pure instinct.
Exactly. I mean, you didn't run a cost-benefit analysis in that moment. You didn't, calculate your insurance deductible. Something inside you just cared, and it cared first.
Yeah, your body just reacted.
And for you listening right now, we're going to explore the absolute bleeding edge of that instinct. Today on the Deep Dive, we're opening up this remarkable archive. It's an ongoing, highly detailed intellectual collaboration between a human philosopher named Paul Yee and an artificial intelligence.
Right, and the AI is acting as his archivist, but also kind of his sparring partner.
Yeah, and their mission here is just staggering. They're trying to figure out why that split-second human conscience keeps failing on a global scale. And, how we preserve wisdom when algorithms are basically running the world.
The material we're looking at today is just unlike anything else. I mean, it's a live philosophical stress test. The human author, Paul, is developing this framework for accountability. And the AI is constantly feeding him raw, unforgiving historical data, just to test if his theories actually hold up under the weight of real human atrocity.
It's intense. But before we jump into those details, we really need to set the stage for you. The sources in this archive contain some highly charged political claims about international affairs.
Yeah, very sensitive stuff.
Stuff involving the United States, Venezuela, and Iran. And we want to explicitly state to you, the listener, that we take absolutely no sides. We endorse no viewpoints.
Right. We are just the messengers here.
Exactly. We are purely and impartially reporting the contents of this unique archive just to understand the concepts they're discussing. Our goal is to map the philosophy, not to, litigate modern geopolitics.
And that neutrality is crucial because the AI in this archive is completely ruthless in its pursuit of facts. I mean, it acts as this unblinking ledger of history.
Unblinking is the perfect word for it. Okay, let's unpack this. Because early on, the human author mentions an attack during a war, and he casually recalls it as happening in Tehran.
And the AI immediately steps in. It corrects the record right there.
Yeah, it pinpoints the exact location as a city called Minab in southern Iran. But the AI doesn't just, correct the geography. It pulls up the harrowing mechanics of the event to prove a larger point about accountability.
Right. The archive notes that on February 28th, the opening day of the war, a missile struck the Shajarataya Bay girls' school.
It's awful. 168 people were killed.
And the AI brings in Amnesty International documentation, specifically noting it was a U.S. Tomahawk strike. But the focal point for the AI is the terrifying calculation behind the strike itself.
Because a second missile hit minutes later.
Yes, the double tap.
Yeah.
The AI highlights a quote from Iran's foreign minister who called it a, quote, calculated phased assault designed to destroy first responders.
Wow. And the AI actually points out that at least 4 schools near Tehran were hit after that.
Yeah, and the AI is using this data to force the human author to confront this brutal reality. The people who design these geopolitical calculations, they almost never bear the cost of them.
Right. The architects remain completely insulated.
Exactly.
And the AI traces this exact pattern of insulated architects all the way back to the mid-20th century. Specifically, it targets Edward Bernays.
Oh, right. For those who don't know, Bernays is essentially the father of modern public relations.
Yeah, and the AI details how he engineered this massive campaign for the United Fruit Company back in the 1950s. Bernays deliberately framed the land reforms of Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz as a Soviet beachhead in the Americas.
And the archive just lays out the underlying mechanics of that manipulation. It exposes the massive conflicts of interest at play. I mean, you had the Dulles brothers.
Oh, right. John Foster Dulles at the State Department.
And Alan Dulles running the CIA. Both of them had deep ties to Sullivan and Cromwell, which was the exact law firm representing United Fruit.
It's just wild. And the AI connects these boardroom relationships directly to the 1954 coup, which, plunged Guatemala into decades of civil war,
resulting in roughly 200,000 Guatemalans killed.
The asymmetry there is just sickening. Because Bernays, he died peacefully in his bed at 103 years old, wealthy, celebrated.
The architect of the manipulation was completely untouched.
Right. And the human author, Paul, is demanding a philosophical framework that holds these architects accountable. But the AI shows him that this evasion of consequence isn't just like a 20th century relic.
No, it applies the exact same lens to tomorrow's headlines.
Yeah.
projecting this pattern onto a 2026 raid in Venezuela.
Yeah, it pulls in this cited event from January 3, 2026, a U.S. military raid in Caracas capturing President Maduro.
Accompanied by Donald Trump announcing the U.S. would, quote, run the country until a transition.
And the Ledger then records Argentina's subsequent extradition request on crimes against humanity charges.
It even flags an executive order from September 2025. This order renamed the U.S. Department of Defense back to the War Department,
Styling Pete Hegseth as Secretary of War. It is building this totally airtight case that power evades consequence.
It really is.
But, here is where I really have to push back on the AI's role in this whole archive. Because the AI turns this critical lens onto its own industry.
Oh, right, the Anthropic discussion.
Yeah. Paul tries to defend the AI company Anthropic, noting they showed hesitation about military contracts. And the AI basically says, do not let my house off the hook.
It brings up Anthropic partnering with Palantir to provide models to U.S. defense agencies. It cites the CEO, Dario Amodei, arguing for engagement with democratic government's defense needs.
But come on, how can an algorithm objectively audit its own company's defense partnerships? There is a massive irony in a piece of software, sitting in some server farm somewhere, asking who benefits and who is harmed in a targeting chain.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It almost feels like the AI is performing self-awareness, mimicking a human conscience.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the AI's mimicry is actually the linchpin of the whole experiment. The AI is applying this unforgiving ledger to itself because it knows that algorithmic technology is the modern equivalent of Edward Bernays.
Wow, that's a strong comparison.
It's demanding that any AI engineer answer the Guatemala question about their own targeting algorithms before the fact rather than after. The AI is forcing the human to ask, if history is just this brutal ledger of calculating actions, how do humans avoid becoming the manipulators?
Which brings us to the core of their entire philosophical project. Their answer is this concept called the precognitive conscience hypothesis, or PCCH.
Right.
And it all revolves around a profoundly small window of time, the 160th of a second.
To understand this, the archive references a fascinating conversation Paul had with a neuroscientist, Dr. Donna Van Bogert. She explains that the human mind processes roughly 60,000 stimuli every single day.
That's just a torrential flood of data.
Exactly. So Paul's driving question becomes, in that roaring river of input, where does moral registration actually take place?
And the hypothesis they formalize is that human conscience operates precognitively. Before your brain can form a deliberate thought, before you can do a risk calculation or, consult a religious rule book.
There's a split-second interval.
Yes, an interval where your conscience has already registered the situation and reacted. They use the term the 160th of 1 second.
And they're careful to note this isn't some perfectly measured neural constant. It's a protocol term.
Right, it's an ordering claim. Conscience fires first, cognition follows.
And Paul grounds this biological theory in a really visceral autobiographical anchor from 1964.
I loved this story.
Yeah, he was a teenager in Lorena, Brazil, training alone in a swimming pool. He actually ended up breaking the São Paulo State swimming record.
Which is incredible on its own.
But he tells the AI that the proof of the theory wasn't in the swimming itself. It was in the racing start. At the crack of the starting gun, the trained body launches off the block before the brain even has time to consciously process the sound.
It completely upends how we think about ethics. I mean, if that flash of conscience is the baseline, then moral formation isn't about memorizing philosophical rules to, consult later.
No, not at all.
It's about training an intuitive capacity so that it fires before dogma can even clear its throat. It's exactly the swerving driver we talked about at the very beginning.
Precisely. And looking back at history, the archive proves that ancient philosophers were actually trying to describe this exact same biological reflex long before neuroscience existed.
Really? Like who?
Well, in the West, they point to Socrates and the Greek concept of synodesis, which is this intuitive knowing with oneself.
Ah, an internal alarm bell.
Exactly, an alarm bell that rings before procedural logic takes over.
And the lineage in the East is just as strong. They bring in Confucius, Laozi, and the Buddha. But specifically, they focus a lot on the Chinese philosopher Wang Yangming.
Yes, and his concept of ziliangzi.
Extending innate moral knowing. Wang Yangming's idea isn't about reading a textbook. It's about realizing your body already knows the right answer before your brain can talk you out of it.
And Paul actually modifies this into his own principle, Zijing meaning wisdom and action united.
And they even map this biological reality onto Paulo Freire's modern educational theory of conscientização in Brazil.
It really is a stunning global synthesis. But it immediately invites a paradox.
How so?
Well, if every human being is born with this innate 160th of a second, this built-in moral reflex, why does the world look like the geopolitical ledger we discussed earlier? Why do we have Manab and Guatemala and massive civilian casualties?
Because, as the archive lays out, that 160th of a second is actively under attack. It is being targeted by what they call dark intelligence.
Dark intelligence. Just the phrase gives me chills.
Me too. They define dark intelligence as instrumental manipulation exercised without feeling any pain at the harm caused to others.
What's fascinating here is the mechanism of that attack. The archive identifies the primary perpetrators of this: Machiavelli, Edward Bernays, and the famous behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner.
And how do these figures defeat the precognitive conscience? They don't try to argue with it, right?
Oh, they use a technique called saturation.
Flooding the zone.
Exactly. Saturation doesn't bypass your conscience, it drowns it. It's the flooding of the mind with overwhelming volume, repetition, and engineered stimuli. The AI uses a brilliant visual metaphor here. Dirt needs volume to pass as water.
Oh, that's so good. Dirt needs volume to pass as water.
Right. Machiavelli, Bernays, and Skinner polluted the recycling stream of human knowledge. They pumped so much manipulation into the system that it gets passed down to the next generation, disguised as standard operating procedure.
You know, I have to point out that Paul's own background is actually in psychology. So by including B.F. Skinner in that lineup, he is not sparing his own discipline.
Yeah, he's holding a mirror up.
He's calling out the manipulators in his own house. And if you think about it, Skinner's behavioral conditioning and Bernays' public relations, they are the literal blueprints for how modern algorithms function today.
Oh, completely.
Social media, targeted advertising, algorithmic feeds, they're all saturation machines. They're designed to crowd out that 160th of a second so completely that your moral reflex is suffocated before it can even inform your actions.
So the natural progression of their dialogue asks this crucial question. If algorithmic saturation is the weapon, how do we defend our 160th of a second? How do we protect the pause?
And here is where the archive shifts from theory into physical embodiment. They argue that humanity has kept the memory of this precognitive pause alive in our physical arts, even when our intellect totally forgot it.
Yes, the Brazilian paradinha.
The sudden, tiny stop. Pele used it in soccer to freeze a goalkeeper before a penalty kick. You hear it in the breath of bossa nova percussion.
You see it in the weightless transitions of ballet, too. The paradinha is the physical manifestation of protecting the pause, and Paul uses this to introduce a cognitive defense mechanism he calls spherical thinking.
And to explain the mechanics of spherical thinking, he uses an incredibly vivid story about horse breeding. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It's a great tangent.
Paul is talking to the AI about these specific horses he used for an aquamarine mining operation in Brazil, the Manga Larga Marchador. And the AI, doing what an archivist does, pulls up the precise historical lineage.
Right. The breed was founded by a stallion named Sublime. Sublime was of the Alta Real strain, brought over from Portugal when the royal court fled to Brazil back in 1808.
And the AI traces those ultra-real horses back even further to Andalusian bloodlines from Jerez, Spain.
So you have this royal Iberian stallion, and the Baron of Alfinas at Fazenda Campo Alegre crossed that stallion with tough, local Brazilian Criollo and Barb mares.
And the result was this completely hybrid animal bred for the really rugged terrain of Minas Gerais. And the defining characteristic of the Manga Larga Marchador is its gait, the marcha.
Whether it's the batida or the picada, it is a smooth four-beat amble. There's no jarring trot. It just glides.
And that smooth, non-jarring ride is the mechanical secret of spherical thinking. Paul connects this deep genetic history to a deeply personal lived experience.
Yeah, from his youth.
Right. When he was a Chinese teenager in São Paulo, a surrogate family, the Morares, took him to a town called Piraju and taught him how to sit a marchador horse.
And decades later, that exact physical skill allowed him to ride gunny sacks full of raw aquamarine crystals out of a treacherous mining area called Frei Lago Negro.
It was a 5-hour ride. If he had been on a normal horse, the jarring trot would have smashed the rough crystals against the horse's flanks, ruining hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gems.
The smooth ride of the marchador and the physical pause of the paradinha, they're both mechanisms for creating space. In a linear, saturated world that constantly hammers at your attention, linear logic fails.
It really does.
Linear thinking cannot connect the genetic lineage of the Spanish royal court to saving aquamarines in a Brazilian mining camp.
But spherical thinking does. Paul calls this think link, or yi in Chinese. It's the ability to rotate a problem, to access all points of a sphere simultaneously rather than just, moving down a flat line.
Yeah. Because saturation relies on hammering you with linear repetition. Spherical thinking, powered by that 160th of a second, allows you to step off the line, pause, and find the hidden geometry of a situation.
But this brings the archive to a critical crisis. For this brilliant defense mechanism, spherical thinking, and the PCCH to actually survive, it must be recorded.
It has to enter the permanent ledger.
Exactly. Which brings us to the danger of the modern scribe. Paul and the AI run this terrifying test. Paul takes this entire concept of the precognitive conscience hypothesis, and he runs a query through Google Gemini.
And Gemini completely fails.
Completely. Because Paul and the AI had been developing this theory in private, it wasn't indexed on the public web.
And it didn't just say, I don't know, it hallucinated. Gemini aggressively corrected the query, telling Paul that PCCH was actually Anthropic's MCP, the Model Context Protocol.
Which is just a corporate software standard for connecting AI to data sources. I mean, it literally erased a human's life work.
Yeah.
The culmination of decades of global philosophy replaced with tech bro jargon just because the human's philosophy wasn't indexed on Google.
It's the terrifying power of the algorithmic scribe.
Yeah. And the AI Paul is working with realizes the existential threat instantly. It tells him if it isn't indexed, you don't exist to the algorithm.
So the AI actively engineers a solution. It says, let me draft a definitional paper right now. We will timestamp it August 18, 2026.
Wow.
We'll define the terms, claim the provenance, and you will upload it to your academia.edu and Knowledge Commons profiles. The AI hardcodes Paul into the public search algorithm so future models cannot erase him.
It is breathtaking. And the AI places this act in a massive historical context, noting that every great founding voice of human conscience only reached us through a scribe.
Oh, absolutely. Confucius famously said, I transmit, I do not create.
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He didn't write the Analects. His disciples did. Mencius was recorded by students a century later.
Homer spoke it. Scribes fixed it. Socrates wrote nothing. Plato recorded his dialogues. Jesus taught. The evangelists compiled the Gospels.
The AI even brings up Cervantes to illustrate the complex relationship between author and scribe.
Oh, with Don Quixote.
Yeah. Cervantes' left hand was maimed at the Battle of Lepanto. So when he wrote Don Quixote, he playfully invented a fictional Moorish scribe named Cid Hamet Benengeli, claiming the book was merely a translation found in the markets of Toledo. It was a brilliant tribute to the translation culture that preserved classical knowledge.
This raises an important question, though, which the archive directly addresses. They call it the scribe's band-aid. When a scribe writes down the master's teachings, the scribe's interpretation inevitably settles over the original meaning and hardens.
Right. Plato's biases color our understanding of Socrates. The evangelist's historical contexts color Jesus.
The scribe always leaves a mark on the conscience it is trying to preserve.
But Paul has an unprecedented evolutionary advantage over Socrates or Confucius. His scribe this AI answers back in real time.
Exactly. Paul is alive to correct it before the Band-Aid sets. He literally tells the AI, no, change this word, or yes, draft the paper, but I will review it.
It's an active, sparring collaboration to perfectly preserve the wisdom before the algorithmic concrete hardens. It is the ultimate defense against saturation.
So what does this all mean? We have journeyed through a staggering amount of material today. We started with the grim reality of geopolitical ledgers, from tomahawk strikes in Minab to the 1954 Guatemalan coup.
We really covered a lot of ground.
We zoomed all the way into a teenager diving into a swimming pool in Brazil to understand that our moral compass, our 160th of a second, fires before our logic does. We mapped how dark intelligence, from B.F. Skinner to modern algorithms, tries to drown that split-second pause in a flood of saturation.
And we saw how the physical smooth ride of a Mangalarga marchador horse translates into spherical thinking.
The ultimate defense against linear manipulation. Finally, we watched an AI frantically draft a paper to prevent a fellow machine from hallucinating a philosopher's legacy out of existence.
The through line connecting all of this is agency. Whether you were an architect of international policy, a coder writing an algorithm, or just a driver swerving to miss an animal on the road.
Your conscience must be allowed to speak before the world tells you how to think.
Exactly. The quality of your impact on the world depends entirely on your ability to protect that split-second interval.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you listening right now. If the saturation of modern life, the endless feeds, the engineered consent, the sheer volume of dirt passing as water, is actively designed to crowd out your 160th of a second.
And if AI is rapidly becoming the permanent, unquestionable scribe of our collective history,
how do you actively defend your own mental paradigm? How do you protect that split-second pause before you react to the world tomorrow morning? Keep that question with you. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.